So, like, I get why Pokemon Smile and Pokemon Friends were missing from Pokemon Day this year, no new updates. But who is keeping Pokemon Cafe Remix alive? Pokemon Pokopia has arrived, and it is now the highest reviewed Pokemon game ever, depending on the day, it seems. Pokemon Pokopia is likely now the crowning jewel in Pokemon's endless wealth of spin-off franchises and video games. Today, it is our job to sit down and figure out what is the Mount Rushmore of Pokemon's endless amount of side games. Today, we are mainly weighing two major factors. How well does the game adapt to Pokemon into whatever genre the spin-off is trying to be? The second is the influence and impact of a spin-off. Just because something is a cult classic doesn't mean it automatically has a spot in the definitive 4. It needs to have some kind of lasting appeal and lasting impact. It also needs to be said that considering Pokemon Legends Arceus and Pokemon Legends ZA are officially recognized as entries in the mainline Pokemon video game series, they don't qualify today. So with that established, let's make our first selection for these 4 games. The first game making it into our Mount Rushmore of Pokemon spin-off games is Pokémon Go. Now look, I know there are some hardcore Pokemon fans that don't really get down with Pokemon Go and the way it crept its way into the series with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, but Pokemon Go was undoubtedly a major milestone for this franchise in its 30 years on this earth. Because back in 2016, for the 20th anniversary of Pokemon Go was kind of the social reintroduction of Pokemon in a major way. You had people of all ages getting outside, touching grass, and catching Pokemon, and meeting people, and engaging with this series that so many people have a deep-rooted attachment to through the anime, the trading card game, the video games. And it brought many people back to Pokemon later in the year, impacting sales of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Pokemon Go made a lot of people realize that Pokemon was still going strong and still worth playing, and something they were nostalgic for. And seeing Pokemon Sun and Moon, the next mainline releases in the series, release, the 3DS and those games got a significant bump from that new wave, round 2 of Pokemania. Now, beyond just reintroducing Pokemon to the general public in a major way, it also condensed a lot of people's favorite quirks about the series, kind of adopting the Pokewalker aspect of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and it let you kind of take advantage of the appeal of Pokemon Snap, using AR to take pictures of your favorite Pokemon out in the world. It is authentically Pokemon. There is no world where Pokemon Go does not make it into this list, and it's still going strong to this day 10 years later. But speaking of mobile games, we should address the Fampy in the room for the next addition to the definitive 4 Pokemon spin-offs. One of the most celebrated recent entries in the spin-off pillar of the Pokemon franchise, Pokemon trading card game Pocket. After the last several years of the physical version of the Pokemon trading card game really blowing up and becoming insurmountably expensive and almost impossible for average people to pick up packs of Pokemon cards, Pokemon TCG Pocket came in with an equally fulfilling experience in my eyes, and an experience without all the clutter of having a binder full of cards. It's a fantastic way to learn a pillar of the Pokemon franchise. It's a very easy way to build up a Pokemon collection with 2 free packs to crack a day. It gets constant support, new packs to unlock all the time. We just recently saw the Paldean Wonders edition representing some Generation 9 Pokemon in the game, and it has managed to be one of the only staples that I keep on my phone in terms of mobile games at this point. I have been playing Pokemon my entire life. I've been cracking Pokemon packs since as long as I can remember. I have never, ever understood or even engaged with Pokemon TCG as an actual game until this app dropped. Now, the importance of the Pokemon series on mobile can't be understated. It is a huge factor in the overall brand. But for our next selection, we are going back to console, specifically to highlight the first ever console Pokemon RPG, Pokémon Colosseum. What I appreciate about Pokémon Colosseum as a GameCube kid is that it is not necessarily adapting Pokémon, the RPGs we played on our handhelds, to a console that lets us play things on our TVs. It's kind of bringing Pokemon to a single-player RPG instead. And what I mean by that is the practice of Pokemon, going out into a world, finding new Pokemon, catching them, befriending them. That's not here. There's no gym leaders, there's none of that. This is a turn-based RPG where you are incredibly limited on the selection of Pokemon you can use as your partners, because there is a story reason why you are able to capture the Pokemon you're able to. There are shadow Pokemon in the Ore region, and the region overall is a much more dirty Star Wars New Hope rundown world than anything else we've seen in Pokemon prior or really since. But beyond having a very interesting setup for a Pokemon story in an RPG, it is also kind of the second coming of Pokemon Stadium on the N64. And to this day, I do feel that the influence of Pokemon Colosseum, and I guess Gale of Darkness as well, can be felt in the tone and atmosphere of the Pokemon Legends series. Arceus and Legends ZA both take that approach of creating an RPG storyline and gameplay system in the world of Pokemon that push it away from the typical structure of the main generation games. I don't know, I just have a great fondness for the GameCube era of these Pokemon games, and I'm glad to see the Legends series kind of embracing that. Let's throw some wrenches into what people expect out of Pokemon. Now, before we reveal the last selection for the 4 GOAT Pokemon spin-off games, I do want to make clear there are so many Pokemon games that could make it into this list, depending on what your personal tastes are, what kind of Pokemon games, stories, gameplay experiences you like, but I do not think there is any world where any version of this list is accurate without a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game on the list. And we have selected Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team. It's fitting that they started the series with Red and Blue games on the Game Boy Advance and DS, respectively, because Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is kind of the second-tier Pokemon franchise. It has a staggering number of releases compared to all of the other spin-offs, and next to those mainline, handheld, and console RPGs, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon has been able to maintain and consistently grow a fanbase year to year, generation to generation, with roguelike dungeon crawling RPG systems and gameplay. It really does feel like this is the other half of the Pokemon video game franchise. It is the other main Pokemon series. Now, these games are praised for their story, and Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, while not the absolute favorites amongst the hardcore Pokemon Mystery Dungeon fans, did introduce that prospect, the idea that these adventures are much more personal, introspective stories in the Pokemon world, following very well realized versions of Pokemon. Like, the main characters in these stories are a Trico, a Cubone, Pikachu, Mudkip, Pelipper. Like, there are no humans, no trainers involved in these games. There is so much charm, personality, and defined identity in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series that the main series has explored and reinvented over time, but Mystery Dungeon, fans know what they're expecting going into one of them. But like I said at the top, there are dozens of great Pokemon spin-offs and full spin-off franchises that could easily be represented on a list of the 4 GOATs, but these are the ones we went with. And I do want to give an honorable mention to Pokemon Ranger for the DS. I know game was infamous for destroying the bottom touchscreens with some people's DS, but it was fun. And dishonorable mention to Pokemon Channel for the GameCube. As a kid, I rented that at Blockbuster. I didn't get it at all. I still don't get it. But I want to know, have you been diving into Pokemon Pokopia this weekend? How does it stack up to your previous favorite Pokemon spin-off game? And is it taking the crown as your new fave? Be sure to let us know, but for more on Pokemon, Pokemon Pokopia, future rankings, be sure to stay tuned right here and over on GameRant.com. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time.